Hey, hello everybody. Welcome back to Every Week English. Uh, it's every week that goes by, you have to practice your English, and either that's with me, listening to this podcast, but hopefully it's on your own, right? And actually practicing it in real life, listening to TV shows, watching movies, listening to the radio, reading a new good book, that sort of thing. Hopefully you guys are doing all that stuff. Talking to friends, right? That's the biggest thing. Maybe you have an English teacher, right? And going to English classes. That's an excellent way to do it also. Likewise, I'm always available if you need that English teacher. You just have to check on my schedule, right? Give me an email at everyweekenglish@outlook.com, right? Um, and you could always check out my YouTube channel. That's just Josh Golson, right? Golson, Gholson, right? And Every Week English, that's all together, right? No spaces, no gaps, things like that. Otherwise, hopefully everybody's been having a good time. Winter is turning to spring here in Moscow. It's quite nice planning a trip to Dubai for about a week. And then I'll plan a trip to go to Latvia to visit a lot of friends, a lot of acquaintances I know over there. So it should be a lot of fun. Um, Likewise, yeah, all good things in the air. Probably to go back to the States also. Um, and of course, get medicine as always every 6 months, right? Knock on wood, get that multiple sclerosis medicine, Ocrevus. So, Ocrevus, if you guys are out there listening, if you'd like to sponsor me, feel free, of course. Um, Otherwise, yeah, today we'll be talking about relationships, actually. Um, and what I normally tell students is that everything is a relationship. Um, so, for example, it's not just between me and my wife, right? It's between me and my dog, right? Or me and my wife's parents, me and my parents, um, students and teacher, right? Teacher and students, vice versa. Um, I've been going down to places like Moscow City, business centers, also handing out business cards, making new acquaintances, all right, seeing if they know anybody who would like teaching as well, because I love meeting people. Recently I went to an English church service. There were about 15 people there, but the sermon was in English. Everything was in English, even. Um, and it's great to meet all of them. Really cool people there, and quite surprising to see in the center of the city. Um, Also, my godfather was there, and I haven't seen my godfather Joshua for about 2 years. He's a Canadian guy. Of course, he's an English teacher. He's about 37 now. Very strange, very funny guy. A bit like myself, quite eccentric. He's a lot more strictly orthodox than I am. I guess that's one of the reasons why I chose him to be a godfather, right? He sends me things to read every day. He's quite good, gives me recommendations, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, likewise, Easter for the Catholics and Protestants is coming up. That'll be at the end of March or even April Fool's Day, April 1st. It was St. Patrick's Day the other day on March 17th, which coincided with the Orthodox holiday of Forgiveness Sunday, which is quite cool. Basically, you ask each other to, you confess to each other, to your friends, to your family, and you say, please forgive me, right? And then you ask God for forgiveness also. It's Прости меня и Бог простит, right? So forgive me and God forgives. It's quite a nice holiday as well. Yeah, so the world is made up of relationships. And our top three idioms for this podcast is to bite the bullet, which means to get something over because it is inevitable, right? So it will happen no matter what. Um, and normally it's negative, right? Um, so so the example is quite depressing, right? Is Vic was diagnosed with cancer, and so he bit the bullet and got chemotherapy, right? So you have to do it, and so you just go through with it. The next one is to go back to the drawing board, which just means to start over, right? And we say like it's never too late to go back to the drawing board, right? To start over, to do something fresh, new. And the last one, to call it a day, which means to quit working or stop working on something. Let yourself and your mind refresh, come back at it again tomorrow. Um, yeah, and really get back into it. Yeah, all good ones. And the grammar for today is present and past habits or states. So this one, it's actually decently simple. Um, it is used to, right? Plus the infinitive for the most part. I just sneezed there. In English you say bless you or God bless you. In Russian you say будь здоров, right? Which means health. Even there were so many German immigrants in the United States that you can say Gesundheit, right? Which also works. But present and past habits, used to or didn't used to plus the infinitive. So it's simply something that you um, had done in the past over and over again, but you no longer do it. So, for example, I used to live in Virginia, right? So that means I had a habit of living in Virginia, but I no longer do it, right? Or, for example, I used to weigh 175 pounds, right? That's, I think it's like 80 kilos, but it means I no longer weigh that. That's the other thing I've been doing is going to the gym and running a lot, preparing for a 10-kilometer um, sports event over in Riga. Yeah, so I used to not run, right? I didn't used to run. Um, a lot of good ones there. Um, some other interesting examples of used to is things like, how did you used to have fun, right? Like, I used to play video games a lot. That means I don't do it anymore because I saw through the veneer or the illusion of video games because that's all they are. And unless you're talking about it with friends, you're talking about it online. It doesn't affect real life. And that's sort of what I've been going through also is thinking, okay, what actually matters in life versus what doesn't matter. And so that's why I started playing things like Warhammer, where you go in real life and you have a community, right? And so when I was a teenager, I used to play Warhammer, then I got into video games, and now I'm back to playing Warhammer, right? Which is those tiny miniatures. Um, and then let me think. Uh, so, for example, how did you used to spend time with your family when you were young? We used to go to museums, to parks, on vacation to places like Myrtle Beach, which is South Carolina. We call it the Redneck Riviera, or places like Fort Story, I think that's Virginia, which was a military fort, uh, quote unquote, but it was a vacation spot. Quite nice. Also, of course, watching different television shows. So, watching a lot of things related with detectives. I remember growing up also watching things like Mad Men, um, although I probably shouldn't have, to think about it. But so I used to watch Mad Men, and then now I'm watching Mad Men again with my wife. And another example, like, did you used to have pets when you were a kid? Um, I did not, right? I didn't grow up with pets, but my parents used to have it, and my brother did. They used to have two cats, um, and I do not remember them at all. I think they might have died before I was born. But now I do have a pet, right? I have a pet Chihuahua, Benny, a very good guy. Although he is aggressive. We should have gotten that out of him when he was young, and it's a failing on my part. Should have trained him better. Otherwise, yeah, trained him as a guard dog, and he sleeps with us, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, so used to versus didn't used to, right? I didn't used to live in Russia. I didn't used to have a podcast. I didn't used to write books. All of those sorts of things. Right? And so it implies the opposite. It implies that I am doing those things now, right? Or currently. Um, and so you can often use just an adverb of frequency with the past simple to talk about used to, right? That also works. Um, Likewise, we often use not anymore or any longer with the present simple to contrast with used to, right? So, for example, I used to go to the gym, but I don't go anymore or any longer. Um, and then there's quite a confusing one. It's for upper intermediate students, which is to be used to and to get used to. And these ones are very different than just didn't used to or used to plus the infinitive. Um, so if you are used to something that is be used to, it means you are accustomed to it. You always do it, so it's easy peasy for you. Um, versus, for example, he can't get used to living in the UK, right? It means that you cannot become accustomed to it, so it is a problem, right? And often I talk about boiling the frog slowly, like during COVID, they said, first off, they said wash your hands more frequently for the first week, so we got used to washing our hands, and we were so used to washing our hands. Then they said some people should wear masks. So some people got used to it. And then they said everybody should get used to wearing masks, right? And so everybody was used to it. They became used to it. They got used to it. And then they locked everybody in their houses in different countries and different states. And so everybody got used to being locked in their in-house arrest, basically. And then they were used to it, right, for a while. And then everything switched, right? And it's just a cold now. Um, and so that's called boiling the frog slowly, because you cannot start off with house arrest, right? People will object to it, right? People would have had protests, things like that. And so you have to do it little by little. It's called incrementalism, right? Just doing something little by little so that people get used to new state of affairs. Um, some other things, what music did you used to listen to a lot? I used to listen to alternative rock a lot. It seems like things like Franz Ferdinand or The Killers. Now I just listen to podcasts, right? Don't even listen to music anymore. What books or comics did you used to read? What do you usually read now? Um, I used to read a lot of fantasy. I have never read comics, right? And currently I'm reading history, right? Real life history. Um, and things like that, so on and so forth, right? So that is used to versus usually. Um, Likewise, talking about some vocabulary for relationships, we have things like couple, so that is two people who are in a relationship or married. It could be either. It's newspeak, it's partner. which is husband, wife, boyfriend, or girlfriend. Right? I don't really like using it because I'm used to a partner is like a business partner, right? So there I use be used to, right? So I am used to the other version. Person that you are engaged to be married with, that is your fiance. Um, there's a male version and a female version. They're spelled slightly differently. Female has two E's at the end. Um, in pronunciation, they're the same, right? And then person you share an apartment with, of course, that's your roommate. Person you work with, that's a colleague. Um, an ex is a person you used to have a relationship with. And again, if you just say ex, you are assuming that it is your like ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend. Otherwise, you can add any noun to it, right? You can say ex-colleague, right? Ex-worker, ex-friend, so on and so forth, for anything really, right? They used to be in a relationship with you, but not a romantic one necessarily. And you have a close friend, right? Is very good friend, and of course a classmate. So that's somebody who went to college or school with you. Um, And then some other good verbal phrases, things like to become friends, right? That means you meet a new person and then you have things in common, right? Which means you have the same interests. And so voila, you are a friend. To be together typically implies dating, right? Of course, marriage, I think you guys know that. Um, to break up. So that's when you are dating and then you are no longer dating. Likewise, you can have what's called a messy breakup, right? Which is not good. It's when you have lots of arguments and things like that. Um, and then let's say, for example, you became friends with somebody, but then you lost touch. So that means you no longer talk with them. You can get back in touch with them, right? Which just means to talk with them again. Um, and then, of course, you're getting to know each other and you're going out together on dates, right? And when typically a man asks a woman to marry him, right, you are proposing, right? Or the man is proposing, right? Likewise, a proposal could be like a business proposal. So you can also switch that. Um, Likewise, I wanted to take a look at an article from Psychology Today. It's about 10 ways to keep a relationship going strong. And so here they're talking about um, typically romantic relationships, right? But it's, for example, to be fully present, right? Which just means to actually be in the moment, right? Don't be looking at your phone or a book, but to actually focus on what is going on. Um, to regularly connect with the other person, which just means to talk to each other regularly. Like ask them, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? Right? That sort of thing. To openly communicate. Um, of course, that is not to backbite or talk poorly about the other person, but don't let your emotions get the better of you. Just say what is going on in your life. And I recommend using I statements. If there is an argument, you say, I feel like this, right? I feel like you're not listening, or I feel like you spend too much time on your phone. Right? And that would be doing it in a respectful and empathetic way. Um, Likewise, don't get too comfortable that you are lazy. Um, so quite often you have to put in, the effort to make the other person feel better, right? Oftentimes you can sleep on that, right? And that goes along with the next one, which is to keep it fresh, which means to mix up what sort of things you're doing with your partner. Um, so go to the movies, right? Plan a romantic dinner, go boating, play golf, like um, really anything that you guys can do together, board games that you all like and have in common. Um, Also, to appreciate the other person's perspective, to try and see where they're coming from, is a really good way to be empathetic with them. Um, there are lots and lots of people on this planet with a different perspective for each one of them. It's quite interesting. Normally, in Western society today, we think of everybody as what we call the Rousseauian blank slate, right? Which is a liberal concept where everybody is a free thinking individual. But in reality, it's a lot different, right? Everybody has baggage, right? They have their whole life history that goes along with them. And this can impact them in different ways, right? So, biggest thing that I like to look at and what I studied is culture. And so, your culture really depends and shapes your perspective. Um, the next one, argue constructively, right? So, don't just start shouting at each other. Have some realistic expectations with one another. Um, is another really good one, but it's just saying like, okay, here's what I think that we should be doing. Here's what I think we're doing incorrectly, and here's what I would like to change, right? I want to see this happen. I want to see things get better over time. Um, yeah, all good ones. Um, and again, there's lots of different relationships out there. Another chapter in upper intermediate, again, these are all from the English file textbooks. It talks about age gap relationships, which is quite interesting. It's people who are a lot older than you, or have friendships with them, or people who are a lot younger than you. And also about, romantic relationships. And I know for us in the West, normally that's looked down upon. Um, for example, there's a 50-year-old guy with a 25-year-old girl. Um, in the East, especially Eastern Europe, Russia, it is surprisingly common, right? And it took me a while, a couple of years to get over that fact, to get over my culture where it's quite weird. But once you logically, break it down, think about it, okay, maybe generational differences are there, so you don't have some things in common. But I think what women are looking for is strength and stability, especially financially. And so if a guy, is 45, 50, um, typically he's in the prime of his life, right? He's a business owner, he's a CEO, right? He's done well at his profession. Um, and so it attracts women because of that. Uh, Definitely stable, and I've known a lot of women, young women with, like 16 years, 17 years, even 20-year age gap differences. Some students of mine are like that. And so we always have that conversation because I'm American and it's very strange to me, right? Because, my parents, they have, well, like a year difference, right? And with me and my wife, we have a 2, 3 year difference. She'll be 30 and I'll be 27, right? So 3 year difference. And she's older than me, right? So those are always quite interesting to see differences around the world in relationships. Um, Likewise, some other things, that go along with relationships is like, how often do you arrange to meet your friends? Do you go out of your way? Do they go out of their way to meet you? Right? Um, do you see them multiple times a month? Do you have a large friend circle, a small friend circle? When it comes to me, I have very different friends for very different reasons. So I have friends who I just play Warhammer with. I have friends who I can talk about anything with. That's people like Mr. Dennis or Mr. Leo. Um, Mr. Dennis would be my best friend, I'd say. Mr. Leo is really, and he's a very serious guy. I or like I have my church buddies, or the poker night friends, and so here it's different people in different circles of my life, who I can do different things with, very different things with, and also discuss very different things with. Um, Likewise, the best thing, just send out a text, to that friend you haven't met up with for a while, see how they're doing, um, and uh, other good things like that, to build strong relationships. What I've learned also in Russia is on a birthday, everybody will actually call you, right, and FaceTime you on your birthday, and so they'll actually wish you good luck, happiness, success in your business, success in your romantic life, different things like that. It's quite nice. Versus for my American friends, you just send a text, right? And quite often I'll joke with my students is we'll get a text like HBD, right? Which just means happy birthday, of course. Uh, and that's about it. Um, Otherwise, relationships, again, I think everything is a relationship. Uh, don't forget about your idioms, which are to bite the bullet, get over something that is hard but inevitable. So, to go back to the drawing board, that means to start over, and to call it a day, right? Which means to stop working on something, and then get a fresh mind. Um, this has been Josh Golson, again from Every Week in English. Have a wonderful week, day, month, year, everybody. I will see you guys next time.